In September 2009, on President Barack Obama's direct orders, American Special Forces launched a daring helicopter attack on a convoy of vehicles south of Mogadishu. The target of the afternoon raid, a 28-year-old Kenyan Saleh Ali Saleh Naban, identified as Al-Qaeda's top man in Somalia and wanted for the 1998 East African Embassy bombings, as well as the 2002 attack in Kikambala on Kenya's south coast. 4 helicopters deployed from a ship offshore opened fire on Naban's convoy, then landed briefly to collect all the dead bodies. It was the boldest blow the US had struck after previous attempts to kill the top Al-Qaeda man. According to intelligence reports, Saleh Naban left behind hundreds of devoted followers. Followers who promised to avenge his death. A terror master only known as Hanif and several of his students. This man will later play a key role in the Uganda attacks, which were Al-Shabaab's first international strike. Intelligence officials are not sure exactly when the plot to bomb targets in Uganda was put in place, but they do know the idea was hatched in Somalia, planned in Kenya before being executed in Kampala. They say at least a dozen people, some of whom are now suspects in custody in Uganda, were behind the attacks. 2 months before the World Cup final, a group of 9 was in Kenya finalizing plans to strike. The 9 constantly communicated with 2 others in Kampala. The terror cell had a base in Nanjankumbi on the outskirts of the Ugandan capital. Its members were spread across the country, but it was in Mombasa that their plot unfolded. Police say Bakari Batemento, Ugandan technician they believe was the bomb maker, set up base at the safe house and a lodging in the heart of Mombasa. For close to a month, room number 14 was booked by 3 men. Hanif, the suspected mastermind of the attack, Batemento, and 1 man who was not identified. The other members in the team led quiet lives in their respective homes, one in Majengo, another in Kisauni. The rest were in Nairobi. A few blocks from the Mombasa lodging was the workplace of a radio presenter, Habib Suleiman Joroge. The tools for the mission did not arrive until 3 weeks before the deadly attacks. 4 suicide vests arrived in Mombasa from Somalia, and Batemento, the suspected bomb maker, go down to work, finalizing the wiring of the explosives before turning the suicide vests into 4 well-laundered jackets ready for the journey to Kampala. By this time, authorities in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania had no idea what the group was up to. What they had, however, was increased security chatter about terror threats, in particular on Nairobi. They did not know exactly where, when and how the terror cells were planning to attack. Records now available to the inside story point to constant phone calls made to Somalia, to a man police say was a top Al-Shabaab operative who later claimed responsibility for the Kampala bombings. A month before the bombing, part of the group moved to Nairobi and rented a house in the city's South Sea estate, as plans to escort 2 suicide bombers were finalized. All this time, the deadly cargo was still in the hands of alleged bomb maker Bakari Batemento. Also in their company was Hanif, a man on a mission to avenge the killings of Somalis by Ugandan peacekeeping forces in Mogadishu. On 23rd of June 2010, with the city's millions retiring to their respective residential areas, one of the terror suspects, Hussein Agade, booked bus tickets for himself and 3 men. 3 suicide bombers, Kaka Sule, another man, Kaka, and 1 unidentified Somali. That same night, another bus left Nairobi for Kampala. On board were Yaya Mbuthi and Hamed Suleiman, two other suspected members of the terror cell. Mbuthi and Suleiman had been arrested a month earlier alongside two Moroccan nationals. Idrissa Issa Luima, who had traveled to Uganda earlier, hired a house with the help of a female friend in readiness for Kaka Sule, Yaya Mbuthi, Hamed Suleiman, and their named Somali national. The next day, a Greenland cruiser left for Kampala. At the wheels was Hija Nyamadondo. The Kenyan immigration officials were not interested in him, but his passenger was immediately flagged as a potential threat. The man, a 24-year-old Muhammad Mugisha, had been arrested in May 2005 while crossing into Kenya from Somalia and allegedly handed over to Ugandan authorities. The terror suspect later claimed he was released by Kenyan police after intervention of others in the terror cell. Mugisha was arrested again and handed over to Ugandan authorities. Idris Luima was later to tell investigators Mugisha was sidelined from the plot after making too many mistakes. What police failed to stop in the back seat of the Land Cruiser was a deadly package, 4 suicide vests packed nicely as laundered jackets. With Mugisha in police custody, Nyamadondo was on his own. The moment he crossed into Uganda, he made frantic calls to Issa Luima to tell him the package had safely crossed over undetected. The same day the suicide vest was safely delivered, Hija Nyamadondo then left Kampala for Tanzania, leaving behind a group on an alleged terror mission. 8 days before the World Cup final, the targets for the attacks had been identified. Hanif, the man at the center of the plan, watched keenly as events unfolded. Uganda had no idea what was about to hit its capital. Kenya and Tanzania were equally unaware of the coordinated attacks. The terror cell struck on the night of July 11th as the World Cup celebrated the last World Cup match. Minutes before the second half of the match, members of the cell were on their way to 3 separate locations in the capital Kampala. 3 suicide bombers left their safe houses in Nyamasuba area in the outskirts of Kampala at about 10:25 p.m. All on motorcycles, Kaka Sule, Kaka and the Somali national, with their suicide vests draped on their bodies. On another motorcycle was Haruna Luima. Their targets: Chadondo Rugby Club in Lugogo, an Ethiopian restaurant slightly outside Kampala's central business district, and Makindye House, which had a popular dance hall frequented by foreigners in Kampala. They all lived within a radius of 10 kilometers apart, chose the cover of darkness and motorcycles as their mode of transport before turning Kampala night into a nightmare. "30 minutes later, the first explosion went off. The Ethiopian village restaurant was thrown into panic.
I called the manager and then, what happened? What happened? Is it a projector? Is it a projector? And then, you know, so many people are running away. And then people are said, help, help. 2 minutes later, 2 explosions rocked this rugby club. The first set off by Idris Nzobuga, the second by a suicide bomber, Kaka Sule.
We were taking casualties and injured and dead people to the hospital up to about 5 a.m. in the morning, so it was quite something.
The Kenyan who should have carried out the third suicide attack, a man only known as Kaka, had opted out of the deadly massacre of innocent fans. Haruna Luima decided to do the job himself, but he too lost his nerve at the last minute, but not before placing the third suicide vest contained in a bag in a flower bed near the Makindye disco in the hope it could be blown up remotely.